Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, a senator of Godfrey, the fifth count of Anjou, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know as the Melchizedek or the Vicar of Christ or Jesus Christ. This is March 6, 2025, which is equivalent to the Berber year 2975. Once again, I am the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, and I come to restore your history. I want to give honor to my Queen Sister Galveston from the House of Galveston, as well as Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, as well as all members from the Third Temple English Church of England, in regards to what it is that we are here and called to do. This lesson today that I present is the FCRA. Debt or credit is the same thing. Know the difference. The FCRA, which is the Fair Credit Respondent Act, debt or credit means the same thing. You must know the difference. Okay? Once again, I'm going to give the people a couple of minutes to come on in, like, share, subscribe, as well as donate free and common sockets to $ Clifford Jefferson L, as well as the Third Temple English Church of England. Once again, as always, I always have a narrative in which to present before you, because a lot of us, as those who are claim to want this history, want it in a certain manner, and so I give it to you in the language that you are more acceptable to, all right, versus how we deliver the information, okay, as the narrative will be Sargon Seti, and I don't disagree with the things that he's saying. I pretty much agree with the totality of the message, but what I disagree is what's not presented in regards to the justification of why the message was presented in the first place. That's what I have a problem with. All right, showing receipts. Okay, so a lot of the things that we're going to hear in the syllabus from Sargon Seti and the language in which he used abstractly, I'm going to bring concrete and let you know that it does, in fact, have a history relative to the laws, relative to the customs, whether it be trade, commerce, etc., to those people that he so loosely identified with. Okay, so with that, once again, to give people a couple of more minutes to get in, like, share, subscribe, leave your name so that I may be able to correspond with you as well in the chat line. If there's any questions, please leave your questions in the chat line as well as in the comments. So we'll get started in a couple of seconds. Once again, those who are watching, please make yourself known in the chat line by leaving me your surname, okay? Not the name you identify on the chat, but your actual surname so I may correspond with you properly. Greetings, Brother Harris from the House of Harris. Glad you were able to join me in this marvelous lecture I have prepared for you today. Okay. If you don't mind, just to make sure that you didn't fall asleep, I'm going to ask you to respond by way of either a thumbs up to make sure that you're keeping up with the lesson, if you don't mind. Who else is with us? Please make yourself known. Once again, this lesson is the FCRA, debt or credit, which is the same thing. You must know the difference. Okay? All right. And this is a very serious topic that we must look at in regards to financial security. Those who are able to obtain financial security. And is it really secure based upon how the financial security was actually acquired? It is actually secure. Okay? Whether it's property, finances, all right, whether it's interest rates on stockholder, things of that nature. Okay, it's really based upon understanding uh, the provider and the receiver. Okay, the buyer and the receiver versus the seller and the lender. Okay, where is the financial security? Where does it come from? Who does it belong to? Why was it given to us? Do it actually belong to us? These are some of the things we must deal with when dealing with the federal credit, uh, uh, federal credit, what was it called? The Federal Credit Reporting Act. Okay, it's something we really must take a look at. Okay, because we know that the Fair Credit Act deals with equal footing in regards to credit. Okay, an act in regards to equal footing based upon credit. Now, there's a problem with that understanding of the equal footing based upon credit, because there is no equal footing on credit. All right, unless you're the creditor, because it's usually only the creditor that is allowed to extend credit. Okay, if you receive credit, then that means you are not the creditor. Wherever your credit came from comes from the creditor. Okay? And the question becomes, if the creditor lent you credit, that means that you are the debtor. Okay? Especially in the eyes of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, because they're reporting credit. Okay? And when you receive credit, credit is a result of what they call lend debt. Okay? They're lending you debt on credit, because when they lend you something, you got to pay it back. Okay, so it's very important to understand what's being said versus what's being understood, because a lot of us have no clue. Right? We don't have a lot of viewers on our channel, which I don't mind, because the information is hard to comprehend. As we're going to see based upon the narrative that I have, he has over 60.4 thousand viewers. Okay. And I do give the brother, you know, props because, he's doing the best he can based upon the insight that he has. Okay? But nonetheless, there's information that he's missing in regard to the process of full liberation, which has been his game from day one. All right. So I commend you on your press for your resolve and the continuance for the liberation of your people. Okay. But there's something missing, and that's the time in which you're trying to acquire your liberation. Okay. So, big ups to you. And, I like the way you're delivered because a lot of people like to hear it in this manner. And a lot of them still don't wake up. But apparently, a lot of those people who are listening, if you got 60.4, what was it, million viewers, okay? And I'm going to build off the brother's lesson, okay? And like I'm going to show you that even in the sense of one's having knowledge, still there's some ignorance in that knowledge based upon the application of that knowledge, which he lacks. Okay? So it's very important to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Once again, I appreciate what the brother's doing, but once again, I know he got to feed his family. You know what I'm saying? Because family is priority. But at the same time, it must not be at the expense of the people. Okay, so with that, let's get started with this marvelous lesson. Can everyone hear me? Please give me a thumbs up in the chat. If everyone can hear me, please give me a thumbs up in the chat. As you can see, the logo behind me, you see the breaking those chains. And as you can see, the hand or the fist extends from the book, from the record, from the writings. Okay? This is very important for all people based upon all people's demographics. Okay? Very important. Because I always say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Time never was when we were not. The life of time began. The time will come when we will be no more. All right. And in today's crisis, you must identify yourself. And we're gonna get a narrative, and it's gonna be given to you raw. You know what I'm saying? So excuse the language that you're gonna hear, but a lot of us must hear it that way in order for us to act upon what it is with some type of effort. Okay, because it's really a crisis in regards to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Because the only thing that they're actually doing is keeping a record of all debtors. Okay? If you're receiving credit, you are a debtor. I don't care what score you have, that means the higher the score, the more you are indebted. Based upon the application, I have you understand that score based upon the data that they collected and who that data applies to based upon demographics. Because demographics means people or society, and graphics means writing, graph, or some type of record. Okay? Very important. As we can see, the way to break these chains is the record. Let's get it. Once again, excuse the profanity. You're never going to hear this information nowhere else on any platform. You're never going to hear this information. Greetings, Brother Cornier from the House of Cornier. Glad you're able to join us. So this is Brother Samra Seti, or King Seti. All right, Samrat Seti or King Seti. He has many names. Okay, remember, people change, but positions don't. So be careful what you call yourself, because somebody's going to hold you accountable for that title, especially when you're talking about liberation of your people. Okay, and that's based upon demographics. Okay, of where those people reside. Okay, very important. So let's get with it. Let me know if you can hear it.
Sarah Super said he kick back, get your mind ready for some information that's guaranteed to be heavy. I'm excited and delighted to be accepting members to not only the Sarah Student SETI YouTube page, General SETI YouTube page, also two dynamic powerhouse institutions on YouTube. Give me nothing but black power, black divinity. I want you to subscribe immediately. Do not hesitate to subscribe. I want you to become a member. The link is right down in the video description. And is in the chat. All you have to do is just click it. You get a video introduction, rundown on the memberships, what they entail. You see one you like, you should most definitely join. Even if you don't, I appreciate your presence here at the Sarah Student SETI General SETI YouTube page. Continue to engage, continue to advance. That's right, family. The General got a new website on Teachable, uploading a lot of dynamic, amazing curriculums, certificate programs, and courses. The first one up, 25 steps to the redemption of definitive black manhood. It was created just for the brothers by the General. I want you
to. Okay, so he got all these curriculums, all right, on his website based upon liberation. All right. We really must examine our leaders or our teachers, the ones who educate us. All right. We must examine everything that they say and hold them accountable.
Get on over there, check it out. It's amazing for brothers that need guidance and structure. We also have the Brotherhood of Heru Roundtable live stream once a week where the brothers get together and discuss very important and
Can you please just hear me out? No. Oh no, all work management platforms are the same. They take forever to learn, and in the end, nobody uses them. Monday.com is the one you'll actually love to use. It lets you set up your workloads yourself. No admin, no longer.
Word I'm looking for. I'm going so fast. Important information dealing with our rise, our liberation. It was another word I was looking for, and it just slipped my mind. But that's all right. You understand? But it's important information for our growth and development. I most definitely want you to get over there and check it out. We got the coaching calls by the General, and you can get that lifeline. You need that lifeline. If you and you hear the General, you know you got a hell of a goddamn counsel that can get you through a situation. And so look up on the site for the coaching call.
So he said, I'm sorry that I missed that. He said that if you need counsel, he got you.
Created just for the brothers by the General. I want you to get on.
Okay, you need counsel, he got you.
It's amazing.
Help you when you get in some shit.
Guidance and structure. We also have the Brotherhood of Heru Roundtable live stream once a week where the brothers get together and discuss very important and what the other word I'm looking for? I'm going so fast. Important information dealing with our rise, our liberation. It was another word I was looking for, and it just slipped my mind. But that's all right. You understand? But important information for our growth and development. I most definitely want you to get over there and check it out. We got the coaching calls by the General, and you can get that lifeline. You need that lifeline. If you and you hear the general, you know you got a hell of a goddamn counsel that can get you through a situation. And so,
okay, so he's the counsel, and him and his affiliation will help you get you through whatever situation that you're going through based upon what he has on his platform. Okay? Very important we pay attention to what's being said. Let's continue.
look on the site for the coaching call app, and you can get in touch with me for the brothers. That's right. Ring the alarm, KingSeti.com, online marketplace.
King Seti, online marketplace. So this is dealing with commerce. Okay? Dealing with commerce. This is governed under Title 12 and Title 15 of the United States Code in regards to what we call competitive consumer trade relations. All right? Very important. He's not doing it on a international or national scale. He's doing it on a scale within the community because this is how his channel remains alive. Which I'm not mad at him. You know what I'm saying? Because the content in which he's given, all right, is good information. It just needs to be expounded on. All right. So once again, gratitude to you, brother. Let's continue.
Official General Sarasu Seti, DVD lectures, t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, African and Kemetic jewelry, holistic tonics and remedies, home decor accessories for every room in the house. I got some amazing products for you. Got a discount for you. Get over there and check out that catalog and get you something nice.
All right.
GeneralSeti.com, Seti University, 2,500 videos, 40 different subjects, all the subjects that you know and love, from the general classic upon classic in every subject. Not another website nowhere on the planet that can compare, compete. You should become a member today.
Ain't no other website on the planet that can compete with what he presents on his website. Okay? Very important. King Seti. All right? We ain't over in Africa. We're not over in Egypt. We're not on that continent. We're right here. So that means that the only way for liberation and freedom is through the laws that are recorded in those books. And 9 times out of 10, you and your counsel does not have this information that's needed for liberation. Let's continue.
He said he got the popping his page on Patreon. By far, all live streams exclusive to Patreon. No old videos or nothing like that. This is all brand new, fresh out the pack. This is what you want, I know, because the most amazing Seti is the one today.
Now, I can agree. He is sell you something. He's a good seller. All right. He can sell you some or lend you something. All right. Because he got that gift of gab. You know what I'm saying? But based upon the laws governing selling or lending, he does not have a clue about what he's talking about. Okay. Yeah, he said on the planet. Right? The populist page on the planet. Well, let's see.
If you listen today, I know the classic, but the information, the most amazing lectures that you could get by General Seti today, the most advanced sage of the age. Get over there and get that Patreon.
He said the most advanced sage of the age. This is what he said. The most advanced sage of the age.
Because it's an exclusive, amazing, exhilarating Patreon. That's right. And all the family out there that donate to the general, thank you, appreciate you. Those that would like to donate, the link in the chat video description, click it, donate. I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to all my YouTube channels, King Seti, General Seti, Sarasu Seti. Rock that notification bell. Get a video a thumbs up, like it.
And I give you a thumbs up because at every channel platform or YouTube out there, you are the most continuous, the most informative, as well as the most articulated platform out there. So I definitely give you that, and I can definitely use you once you come into the understanding of what it is I'm about to reveal to you today that will truly help liberate the people that are identified by whatever name that they choose to be called by. Okay? So if you're watching this, Brother Shetty, get in touch with me, man. Please.
Because you love it, share with your family and friends, and comment. Just don't say nothing stupid because I will
ban your ass. I like when he say that.
If the Trump, the MAGA is Liberation Day, Trump's global tariffs shake up economies all over the world, all over the planet. And a lot of people see this as doomsday. You understand?
Okay, so he said Trump tariffs, Magna shake ups the world. Okay, and some people call it what they call the doomsday. Okay, that's what they're calling it. The doomsday. Okay, now when you hear from him, you just think it of a point in time where a lot of disarray is going to happen as a result of the state and affairs of, we call it anarchy. Okay, state of anarchy. This ain't the first time this have occurred. It happens throughout time. Okay, and it's recorded in history. Okay, and as a result of those records kept by our ancestors, every time it occurred, we was always able to break those freedom, break those chains. Okay, I was watching the movie Black Panther the other day. I love when they be like, "Do the X." That's beautiful. You know what I'm saying? When they be doing that X, Wakanda forever. You know what I'm saying? So I'm definitely in the spirit of Wakanda or T'Challa. I'm definitely trying to accomplish what the ancestors could not do, and I don't want to leave nobody behind. But if you choose to stay behind, that's your own reasoning. Okay, let's continue. So he said that. Let's repeat.
Link is in the chat video description. Click it, donate. I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe. This ticket. We cannot sit here idle.
Hold on.
And wait. Saying some people see this as a means to reclaim the legacy of. Thank you, appreciate you. Those that would like to donate, the link is in the chat video description. Click it, donate. I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to all my YouTube channels, King Seti, General Seti, Sarasu Seti. Rock that notification bell. Get a video a thumbs up, like it because you love it. Share it with your family and friends, and comment. Just don't say nothing stupid because I will ban your ass. Okay, today, if the Trump, the MAGA, is Liberation Day, Trump's global tariffs shake up economies all over the world, all over the planet. And a lot of people see this as doomsday. You understand? Some people see this as a means to reclaim the legacy of the United States of America. I don't know what legacy that is because everything they ever got, they got off the backs of black people. They enslaved and worked for goddamn free. And so I don't know what the fuck they talking about. How somebody got over on them, but they don't talk about how they got over on us. We need to put tariffs on their ass.
Stop it. Okay. So some people see this as doomsday. Okay. All right. Abstractly talking, he said doomsday. For us, that takes us back into a time and era of events that occurred, which resulted in the same type of events that occurred that are happening now. Okay. Tariff wars. Okay. Tariff wars are a result of limitations put on trade and commerce. Okay, limitations put on trade and commerce. This is very important. So let's take a look at that. All right, let's take a look at that. First, let's take a look at Doomsday Book. No, let's not do that first. Let's look at competitive law, competition law. Let's look at that. Competitive law. All right, very important because this is governed under what they call antitrust law. All right, which is also governed under the Consumer Privacy Act, which we're going to talk about again. All right, which is some of the protection that you have in regards to the creation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Okay, these are some of the protection that the consumer has. Okay, based upon his consuming. We know when you consume means that you are a user. Okay, you're using something of someone else that doesn't belong to you. All right, in real property called easement. Okay, very important to understand that. All right, so competition law. Let's look at that. Competition law is a field of law that promotes or seeks to maintain market competition by regulating anti-competitive conduct by companies or monopolies, businesses, etc. Competition law is implemented through public and private enforcement. It is also known as antitrust law or just antitrust. That means anybody who violates that trust or the laws governing the trust, and we know the trust is agreement between the creditor, okay, the ones who has the ability to lend, okay, one who has the ability to sell, okay. This usually results in the owner, okay, very important. And when the owner allows things to be sold or lent to somebody, all right, and when there's other lenders out there selling and doing things under the same magnitude, this is when antitrust law comes in regards to what we call anti-monopoly laws dealing with trade practices. Okay? So once again, competition in law is the field of law that promotes or seeks to maintain market competition by regulating anti-competitive conduct by companies. Competition law is implemented through the public and private enforcement. It is also known as antitrust law or just antitrust or anti-monopoly law and trade practice law. The act of pushing for antitrust measures or attacking monopolistic companies known as trust is commonly known as trust buster. So we have to break these fraudulent trusts that have been created, okay, and which are in violation of the antitrust law based upon competition laws, which is the laws governing consumer protection and consumer privacy. All right, very important. Let's go to the history. All right, we don't want to go back too far. Let's start here. Legislation in England to control monopolies and restrict practices was enforced well before the Norman Conquest. The Doomsday Book records that forestall, i.e., forestalling the practice of buying of goods before they reach market and then inflating the price, was one of the three forfeitures that King Edward the Confessor could carry out through England. Once again, there is that term, Doomsday Book. Doomsday. Okay? Very important to use that term in its proper sense and not use it abstractly as the brother just did. Okay? But concern but concern for fair prices also led to the attempts to direct regulate the market. Under Henry III, an act was passed in 1266 to fix bread and owl prices in correspondence with grain price laid down by the assize courts. Penalties for breach included immersement, pillory, and tumbrel. 14th century statute labeled forestallers as oppressors of the poor and community at large and enemies of the whole country. Under King Edward III, the Statute of Laborers of 1349 fixed wages of artificers and workmen and decreed the foodstuffs should be sold at reasonable prices. On top of existing penalties, the statute stated that the overcharging merchants must pay the injured party double the sum he received. And the idea that has been replicated in punitive treble damages under the United States antitrust law. Also, under Edward III, the following statutory provisions outlaw trade combination. So the foundation of antitrust law, okay, or competitive law go always back not just to the Plantagenet king, Edward III, Henry III, which is the father of Edward I, Edward II, Edward III. These goes back to Edward the Confessor, okay, before William the Conqueror invaded England, okay? And this was all recorded in the Doomsday Book, okay? The book recording the day when doomsday would come from those who occupied land and or hold property that do not belong to them, okay? Remember the name of these kings, Henry III, the father of Edward I, Edward II, the Edward III, because you're going to find them right now in present statutory law, which we're going to talk about in the few. Okay? So the Doomsday Book, dealing with antitrust law or competition law or anti-monopoly law. And we know a monopoly are corporations, okay? Very important. Just like Experian, just like Equifax, just like TransUnion, just like Credit Karma, all these are monopolies, okay? Credit reporting bureaus for Fair Credit Reporting Acts collecting data based upon the person's demographics, okay? We must understand that. Let's look at Doomsday Book, since we associated Doomsday with competition law, going back to the foundation of the competition law or antitrust law, which is now called Sherman's Law. Okay? The Sherman Act. Very important we understand that. Doomsday Book. Okay? Doomsday Book, Middle English spelling of Doomsday Book, is a manuscript record of the Great Survey of much of England and part of Wales completed in 1086 at the behest of William the Conqueror, who invaded England. The manuscript was originally known by a Latin name Liber de Wintonia, meaning Book of Winchester, where it was originally kept in the royal treasury. Okay? Very important for us to understand that because prior to 1065, 1066, the only kings that were ruling in England were Berber kings. Okay? So we understand the Doomsday Book was a book created by a king who invaded England and based upon a feudal system that was implemented by he who invaded England. And we can, in New Jersey, we can claim as a descendant of William the Conqueror based upon how they applied and how they received the ability to be able to receive property, own property, and sell property, which is based upon the antitrust laws that were put in place by our ancestors, which clearly they have been violated. Okay, which ultimately denotes to their doomsday. All right, let's look at it. This is the New Jersey Land Title Institute. We talked about this article before. We're going through it again. History and background of feudalism. This is a monopoly or a corporation or a business that's way out in Ohio that are using the laws of the statutory laws of New Jersey to base their ability to be able to assure defective titles or cloudy titles on properties that are now in possession by way of some form of instrument that you call a deed. Okay? So it says historical background feudalism. Because New Jersey was formerly a colony of the Crown of England, the history and development of our entire legal system, including our system of land ownership, has its roots in England. For our purposes, the development of land ownership begins with the successful invasion of England by the Normans in the year 1066 under the leadership of William the Conqueror, King William I. William I introduced the feudal system in England. Feudalism is based upon the concept that all land is held, whether immediately or immediately by the sovereign. In other words, all land is owned by the king, and all others having an estate and interest in that land ultimately derive their interest from the king. Let's go to some supporting legislative enactments to support that. This is Title 46 governing property, estates, entail. 46:3-15. Whenever any conveyances, will, or instrument or writing shall hereafter be made, whereby any grantee, devisee, or other person should become seized in law and equity of such estate in any real estate, or under the statute of the 13th of Edward I, called the statute of entail, would have been held in the state in fee tail or of any type or character. Such conveyance, will, or instrument shall vest in the state in fee simple, and such grantee, devisee, or other person. So this is your trust that was established, that was protected by antitrust law or competitive law. Okay? Very important that we understand that. Why? Because we understand, as we just read, feudalism was implemented by William the Conqueror, and the only way New Jersey came to the right to possess land called New Jersey was based upon the successful invasion of England by William the Conqueror. And we see that here because it says here, under the New Jersey Revised Statute 46:3-2, the feudal system was abolished. Okay? It was abolished. The feudal tenures, estates, and instances thereof taken away, discharged, and abolished from after March 12, 1664. This is the day when the charge was given to Duke of York by Charles II, a descendant of Charles I and King James, the sixth King of Scotland, the first king of, soon to be the first king of England, based upon that which was established by the Stuart dynasty. And the Stuart dynasty was established by way of the unification between England and Scotland and the Treaty of Union in 1707. Prior to that, England, Scotland, as well as Ireland remained separate crowns. And we see, based upon the statute governing property, this property was governed not under the Scottish king, but under the English king, because if you read revised statute 46:3-2, it states here. Now, King Seti, or Sarwan Seti, is not showing you this. This is what he should be showing you based upon the demographics data collection that supports your rights to not just those to receive credit, but to be the creditor to extend credit to those who are now called the debtors. Because a debtor is a sinner. Okay? Very important. Under revised statute 46:3-2, it says tenures in honor of the manors, lands, tenements, or hereditaments, or of estates of inheritance at the common law held either of the King of England, not Scotland, not Ireland, not Britain, not United Kingdom, not Spain, not France, but England, okay, of any person or body politics, meaning somebody sitting at the King of England, because that is known as the corporation soul, which controls the body of politics, which is a corporation, but it's not an aggregate. It's a single corporation or sole corporation, which consists of one natural person that was here in 1702, which was called His Majesty's Council, which, according to the occupation of the tenure of a king, is indefinite. Okay, meaning that it never ends. All right, we see that under New Jersey Provincial Council right here, which we go to. All right, all concrete sources that you can reflect in regards to the doomsday that is actually occurring right before your eyes. New Jersey's Provincial Council, which is the Council of the Crown of England. The local fashion length of term is indefinite, which means forever, and authority was under the Crown. And the Crown of England was under the fusion of government for that thought. Was under the Crown government, okay? And we know that in 1702, the Crown of England was right here in New Jersey because it was called His Majesty's Council, Okay? And the authority of His Majesty's council, whenever an English king was sitting in and supported by his council, the authority of that government was indefinite. Okay? All right? It will remain indefinite whether there's somebody sitting in the office or not, or whether it's being occupied by de facto monarch, which we know based upon what United States versus Lee stated that what was dissolved by the Stuarts, i.e., the kings of the House of Stuart, i.e., Scottish kings, have now come to uh, uh, stability, okay, based upon the crown of England being restored when I came to the position of the knowledge that that position had needed to be filled, okay, and that brought about Doomsday Book, okay, yes, that brought about Doomsday Book. Very important that you understand that with the understanding of this lesson, all right. So he mentioned that they know it's Doomsday Book. They ain't telling you the origin of where their doomsday come from, but he did say that they are calling this doomsday, okay? And this doomsday, based upon the history concerning doomsday, which concerns those people identified as Negro, Black, colored people, which Brother said he has no idea of that knowledge, okay? So let's continue.
That's what we need to be doing. We need to be putting tariffs on their ass. They talking about how the other countries in the world got over on the U.S., but they don't talk about how they got over on black people and then stole all their land and all the resources that they built up for themselves. Not nothing that was given because we was never given shit.
Okay, let's deal with that. He said we were never given anything. Okay? To be giving something means that it either was given to you, means they lent it to you, or gave it to you. Okay? This is what we call credit. Okay? And when somebody gives you something, it usually means it has to be paid back. Okay? Because far as just giving us something, we haven't received anything which we call reparations in regards to liberation. We haven't received anything. If anything that we receive is based upon that which is based upon laws governing credit. And we know that when you get credit, it's a result of you being indebted to that credit that they lent you, right? Because they are the creditors, but they don't have the right to be the creditors, okay? This is what we have to take a look at, okay? Especially based upon our ability to be able to do what this brother is talking about in our communities. Let's read a little bit more. Hear a little bit more.
So everything that our ancestors in America built up, and that it was with their own hands, their own ingenuity, their own hard labor, sweat, blood, and tears went in it to build it up. And so we have to see that this is a very trying time for black people. Because the time, thinking somebody gonna give you something is over with. And I'm not saying we're not old, but at this as the clock is ticking, we cannot sit here idle and wait on a motherfucker to give us something and it never comes. And time is ticking, and critical time is ticking right now.
Okay. So we can't wait on somebody to give us something, because if they give us something, that's called credit. Okay? That's called credit. All right? Which we're going to take a look at that. But he just said ain't nobody going to give us credit. And even if they gave it to us, it just amounts to what? More debt that's just got to be paid back to them because they are known as the creditor. All right? When are we going to be in a position to be creditors of our own stuff, and we'll be able to lend it out as credit to somebody else because it's protected under the antitrust law or the competitive law or the anti-monopoly law that your ancestors created governing competitive um, consumer privacy rights, okay, which we now are going to go in to. All right. Because he said, ain't nobody going to give us shit. All right. But they're giving us something, but everything they give us, we got to give it back. Okay. So let's take a look at what he's talking about. Creditor. What is a creditor? A creditor or lender is a party, person, organization, company, or government that has a claim on the services of a second party. It is a person or institution to whom money is owed. The first party in general has provided some property or services. Now, we just read Title 46, which governs property dealing with the land and everything else on the land. Okay? And we already know, based upon Title 46, Colon 3-2, that was the king. So the king is the actual creditor and the king is the actual lender. Anybody else is considered what they call a debtor. Okay? Let's get that straight and point. The first party in general has provided some property or services to the second party under the assumption, usually enforced by some type of agreement, contract, that the second party will return an equivalent property and service. The second party is frequently called a debtor or a borrower. So we have a creditor, a lender, a seller, or a buyer. Okay, the first party is called the creditor, which is the lender of property, services, or money. Usually, what's being lent or what's being given is not property, because property is not subject to the concept based upon how it's being paid for. That involves what we call a process called wildcat banking. Yes, sir. Forgive us of our debts. Okay, let's deal with that. Okay, creditor. Okay, we know the creditor is God. Okay, and you praying to God to forgive you of your debts. Okay, not up in some heaven in some abstract way, but you want a concrete way for your debt to be forgiven here on earth. All right? Because based upon the information that's filed with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and based upon the demographic data that's collected, based upon your behavioral patterns of how you spend money, determines what information that's being reported, and not including or not excluding the consumer protective rights and the competitive rights that you have as a consumer. Okay, very important. Creditor. So we've seen creditor. Now let's look at a debtor. A debtor or debtor is a legal entity, legal person that owes a debt to another entity. That entity may be an individual, a firm, a government, a company, or other legal person. Now we understand Experian, uh, TransUnion, uh, uh, um, Credit Karma, and all the other ones reports or collect data information that the businesses collect based upon the behavioral patterns of the data that's collected based upon the demographics of those who are called consumers. Okay? Very important. And if you sign on that dotted line, then guess what? You are the debtor. All right? If X borrowed money from their bank, X is the debtor of the bank, is the creditor. If X puts money in the bank, X is the creditor and bank is the debtor. Okay? This denotes to consumer debts. But you as a consumer also have property rights based upon your competitive rights. Okay? Competition rights, which is protected by antitrust law. Okay? It's not a crime to fail to pay a debt. Did you hear that? Except in certain bankruptcy situations, debtors can choose to pay debts at any priority they choose. But if one fails to pay the debt, they have broken a contract or agreement between them and a creditor. Generally, most oral and written agreements for the repayment of a consumer debt for personal, family, or household purposes, securely primarily by a person's residence, are enforceable. You hear that? By a person's residence are enforceable based upon the consumer debt. So all the data that they are collecting based upon the demographics has nothing to do with your consumer rights or your privacy rights protected by antitrust law based upon your citizenship. But based upon your residency is contrast to citizenship. They're not actually determining the information that's collected, which protects your right as a citizen under consumer and privacy laws. Okay, which is called antitrust laws or competition laws or anti-monopoly laws. Okay, which we are going to talk about. Okay, as Brother Cornelius says, this is the reason why we have the Lord's Prayer. Default. Default occurs when a debtor has not met its legal obligation according to the debt contract. It has not made a scheduled payment or has violated a covenant in a debt contract. Default may occur if the debtor is either unwilling or unable to pay its debts. This is occur when all debts, obligations, including bonds, mortgages, loans, and promissory notes. This is where the idea of wildcat banking comes into play. Okay? Other uses. Okay? So this is dealing with, as Brother Cornelius says, forgive us of our debts and we forgive our debtors. Okay? It says other uses. In the Latin version of the Lord's Prayer, the word etem dimite nobis debita nostra secut et da dimitius debitoribius, if I'm pronouncing wrong, please forgive me, nostris, the word debtor or debt are sometimes translated as sinner and sin. This particular understanding of sin as a form of debt that humanity inherits is related to the soteriological theory of substitutionary atonement, which states that Jesus died on the cross as a proposition or substitute for sinners. Okay? Very, very important for you to understand that. Okay? So we understand creditor and we understand debtor. So if you're a debtor, then you are a sinner and you are in hell. If you are receiving credit from a creditor, you are a sinner and you are in hell. Okay? If you are a creditor, that means that you're the one that's in heaven because you're the one that's able to put one in hell or let him remain in heaven. Okay? And heaven and hell is a state of mind. Okay? Very important. Fair Credit Reporting Act. Fair Credit Reporting Act. Let's take a look at this. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is governed under Title 15 of the United States Code, Section 1681, is federal legislation enacted to promote the accuracy, fairness, and privacy of consumers' information contained in the files of consumer reporting agencies. It was intended to shield consumers from willful and or neglected inclusion of erroneous data in their credit reports. You hear that? So the Fair Credit Reporting Act reports information with reporting agencies do the Fair Credit Reporting Act under Title 15 of the United States Code based upon consumer information. Okay? But with that information, there are some protections for the consumer based upon their right of privacy. Okay? Very important that we understand that, especially if you are, in fact, a consumer. Okay? So, what does consumer information means? To see if we justify if we fall under the category as a consumer. Consumer data or consumer data refers to all personal behavioral and demographic data that's collected by the marketing companies and departments from their customer base. To some extent, data collection from customers intrudes into customers' privacy. You hear that? To some extent, data collection from customers intrudes into customers' privacy. Why? It's based upon the lack of information that denotes to one's demographics. Because this is what they're collecting information based upon the behavioral of those who are consumers according to their demographics. Okay? This is what it just said. What is demographics? Demography. People, society. Writing, drawing, description. It's a statistical study of human populations, their size and composition, ethnic group, age, and how they change through the interplay of fertility, birth, and mortality, death, and migration. Demographic analysis examines the measures of the dimension and the dynamics of the population. It can cover a whole society or groups defined by criteria such as education, nationality, religion, and ethnicity. And all of that is subject to be dissolved by the administration and executive orders that are underway now. Okay, so it's very important to find out what groups are a part of in society and what protections you have, that whether it's a description or writing or drawing, you're going to have that at your disposal to determine your right to that education, that right to have a nationality, the right to be protected by your religion based upon the ethnicity. Okay, which is very dynamic in character, which we'll discuss today. Okay, so consumer data, once again, that's collected by the fair credit reporting agencies, okay, such as Experian, TransUnion, Credit Karma, and what's the other one? Equifax. Okay, they're reporting information based upon the behavior of the demographics of the people in society, whether they are residents or whether they are citizens. And the resident and the citizen is not the same thing based upon the ID that you have in your possession. Because on it, it says you are not a citizen, nor does it have anything to do with citizenship, whether you are a naturalized citizen by what they call just soil, or you're a citizen by way of just sanguineous, by blood. Why? Because that must be on the public record based upon the customer data information, based upon the demographics of the people in society, based upon how they're classify you in society, which you at this point definitely needs to take a look at. Okay? Especially when it comes to credit. Okay? Because if you're getting credit, then that means that you are in fact a debtor versus the creditor who's able to give credit to the debtors, i.e., the sinners. And the only one that can do that is Jesus. Okay? So the Fair Credit Reporting Act is a federal legislation enacted to promote the accuracy, fairness, and privacy of consumers' information. And we know what that means. The behavioral patterns based upon those in society governed under the data collected, which denotes to the demographics. And we know based upon what the statute says, demographics, it falls into 5 categories. We fall into the 3rd category, meaning Middle Eastern, North African, which is the information that should be used to establish if we are in fact debtors or creditors, because the creditors were the ones who extended the credit, and we know that the government was founded by those identified as white people. But we understand when they used it based upon the Naturalization Act, it had to do with the color of skin associated with the Caucasian. But when we use it, it has to do with what the Bureau the Census Bureau denotes to, which is those of Middle Eastern and North African descent. If you don't know what that is, please review my last lesson. Okay? With that in mind, let's continue. Okay? So we do have what we call consumer privacy rights. Okay? Based upon us as members of society and according to the demographics of where we are in society and based upon the competition laws or the antitrust laws or the anti-monopoly laws that are operating on the land based upon demographics, based upon the information that they're receiving, which is called data information, which is not the information based upon the people, based upon the demographics in regards to MENA. Middle Eastern or North African descent. How they're classifying you is based upon what the government has put in place based upon classification. Okay? And in their eyes, on the federal level and the state level, you are in fact a debtor because you have now received credit. Okay? When you receive credit, it makes you a sinner. Okay. The codification of the Fair Credit Reporting Act is governed under Title 12 of the United States Code that deal with banks and banking. Title 15 of the United States Code deal with commerce and trade, which governs monopolies. Okay, this is why we having a problem we have on the national, international, as well as in domestic level. Okay, very important because we lack this information of the information that it's being used against us in regards to our political status that's been in exchange for our civil status. And the civil status, as the record reflects, is that you are in fact debtors. Okay? You are in fact debtors because the origin of consumer privacy rights is rooted in competition laws. What is consumer privacy rights again? Let's define it before we move on with this lesson. Consumer privacy is the information privacy as it relates to the consumer's products and services. A variety of social, legal, and political issues arise from the interaction of the public's potential expectation of their privacy rights and the collection and dissemination of data by businesses and merchants that collect information from the public, i.e., their residents or citizens, vice versa, okay, and how that information is obtained. Consumer privacy concerns dates back to the first commercial carriers and bankers who enforced strong measures to protect consumer privacy. That will actually denote to what they call antitrust law or competition law. Okay? You must understand that. Right? That takes us to competition laws. Let's look at that before we go back to the video. Competition laws. But once again, I don't care if your credit score is 800. In their eyes, it's just a way for you to incur more debt, okay, by the creditor. And usually those creditors are the banks and those monopolies that extend unlawful credit because it violates competition laws or antitrust laws or anti-monopoly laws, and they are governed under Title 12 of the United States Code and Title 15, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay? The origin of those laws, known as antitrust laws, okay, once again, it stems back to the Middle Ages, okay? Stems back to the Middle Ages, which Brother Sinetta was talking about. They call it the Doomsday Book, all right? They call it the Doomsday Book. Very important for you to understand that. All right, right here. Another point I want to read. Where is it at? Okay, here we go. Fair Credit Reporting Act. Let's go to the civil liabilities. All right. The civil liabilities that can occur if they report information wrong. Okay. Fair Credit Reporting Act under Title 15 of the United States Code governs the privacy protection as well as the consumer uh, uh, privacy rights that you have, as well as the consumer competition rights, those antitrust law that were put in place based upon or to promote the accuracy, fairness of the privacy of the so-called consumer. Okay, and that's very important that you understand that because when you go back to the origin of it, it starts in England, our ancestors. Okay, and the civil liabilities for violating that law states that civil liabilities. The Federal Credit Reporting Act regulates consumer reporting agencies. One, consumer reporting agencies. Two, users of consumer reports. And three, furnishes consumers information. If a consumer rights under the Federal Consumer Reporting Act are violated, they can recover one, actual statutory damages. Two, attorney fees. Three, court costs. And four, punitive damages if the violation was willful. The threat of punitive damages under 1681 of the Federal Credit Reporting Act is the primary factor to deterring erroneous reporting by reporting industries. Very important that we take that under consideration based upon the civil liabilities that they can face when they report information based upon wrong information that they collect based upon the assumed demographics of the people in society. Because based upon the data collected, they don't know who the hell we are. Okay? We debtors. Okay? We were the ones that allowed to be subject to the conditions of the debtor, which means a creditor. Whether you got good credit or bad credit, it's a contractual agreement that they put you in, which is not the same as a creditor. We must understand that, and we understand what the word creditor means. We understand what the word debtor means. Okay, very important. Let's go back to the video.
A serious move for our people, so that we could take the stress of the of this slavery that's on us in America. We could get it up off of us. You see, everything that's happening is because you got balls and chains connected to your ankles and your wrists, and to this country that's in decline and ready to fall in any second now. You see, any second now it could fall. Yeah, because of their own policy.
For anyone with dementia, do not drink warm water. Did you know that memory loss is not a condition of the mind? Most people don't know.
Shit that they done over the years, it come back. They don't believe it when they say what you reap, you shall sow. You think that that applies to everybody but America. You understand? They don't want to hear that. You get to talking like that, they're gonna say you a radical. You a radical, but it's in what goddamn then it's a radical book. Then it's a lot of radicalism in the book, which means if it's God's word, then God is a radical. You understand? That's what it's saying. So God is a radical. So it can't be all wrong. Can't be all wrong. See, you just don't think nobody should practice these liberating, very well could be liberating policies against you. You feel me? And so, looking at how it's you look at the tariffs and you say, are they gonna work? But what is it gonna do for hope? I'm saying, like I said, they're not creating a wave for us. If a wave come down this motherfucker, you throw your surfboard in that motherfucker and you ride the wave. That's how it is. It's not made for you.
Listen what he's saying. This wave, this artificial wave wasn't made for you. All right? But nonetheless, this wave is coming. And if you don't know how to surf, you're going to have a problem. Okay? And we ain't talking about something that they skilled in. We're talking about being able to surf this economic downfall that's coming. All right? That involves the very thing we're talking about, whether we're going to be creditors or whether we're going to be debtors. Okay? Very important. And the only way that you're not going to be a debtor is to understand that the information that they're collecting is not the information of the demographics when you were originally a creditor. Because when you were originally a creditor, based upon the credit that was stemming from the creditor, you were an heir. Okay? You were a descendant of the creditor. Okay? And that was the king. Okay? Based upon that, going back to the doomsday that we're now occurring, that was foretold about when the doomsday first occurred, which apparently, according to New Jersey, was when the successful invasion of William the Conqueror. Okay? Here in New Jersey, because when New Jersey was here, indefinite, going all the way back before William the Conqueror invaded it, and all the way up until the time of Queen Anne in 1702, when it was called His Majesty's Council. Okay? Which the only thing missing from the crown is His Majesty and His council, which have now been restored, which were the keys that were necessary to use based upon the liberation to counter the non-liberation policies or the anti-policies that to non-liberation that were actually instituted by those who are in lieu of what we're talking about now. Those who made you debtors, okay? Those who are continuing to report the people are debtors in the eyes of the law, okay? They are debtors in the eyes of the law. They choose to be debtors in the eyes of the law.
But you got to be smart enough to get in the way and go and get what you can get and get where you're trying to go. It could be a means to get you closer to where you're trying to go. And, but, that's what it's about. And so, is it a wave that black people could ride? Is it a wave that we could ride, or is it an illusion? Is it an illusion that a wave is coming and we think a wave very well may come and it don't come? That's what happens all the time when you rolling the dice and shit. We got to get sound policy.
Okay. So he's saying that we as the people are taking the chance because policies are being created every day, counting the policies that are created for liberation. Okay. And we see it what what was ignored in the venues and in the avenues in regards to the legislation are now we're seeing effects in the avenues and the lanes in regards to the economic downfall that we're now experiencing as a result of the executive decisions lacking the legislative authority to actually do what it is that's necessary to maintain the political standing as liberated people. Okay? Because liberated people are the creditors, all right, which are able to liberate those who are not creditors that are debtors. That was the whole purpose of the movie The Black Panther. Okay? All right? Not taking what it is that we had from day one and using it for the benefit of the whole. But as a result of the actions that our ancestors picked up along the way, and we think that they're not inheritable as a result of their practices, with those may be able to bear for it. I'm not trying to do that. So I'm calling upon all those who are able to be able to sit at Intelligent Man and to be able to deliver concrete facts that's not presumptive in nature, but that are able to be used as an affirmative defense to be able to turn around what it is that has been continuous from day one, okay? The overthrow of the black people, the overthrow of the colored people, the overthrow of those who are the originators, the inheritors of such an illustrious state that needs to be liberated, okay? And the only way you can do that is by the law. Okay, let's continue.
We got to get sound. We don't have sound policies right now. Too much of it rely, on another motherfucker doing for us. You feel what I'm saying? Too much of this shit rely on another motherfucker doing something for us. What can we do for ourselves right now that don't require another motherfucker to help us? Let's do that. You see, I ain't worried about whether, they erasing goddamn black history and shit. Yeah, what fucking black history? This shit y'all niggas teaching ain't no goddamn black history. What the fuck is y'all teaching? The kids don't know a damn thing about nothing, no way. Oh, they erasing black history. I mean, is the kids really?
Listen to what he's saying.
Welcome to OCC Learning, an e-learning platform where investors can find.
Because he's claimed to be teaching. He's saying what he's teaching is what we need to know, okay? Versus what's being taught now, okay? And I'm telling you what's been taught and what's being taught now is not going to do it, okay? I'm not just telling you, I'm going to show you because apparently he's not showing you, nor anyone that came before him have shown you the way to liberation, okay?
Do they really venerate during black? You put the same tide motherfuckers up there. You know, and I ain't saying, but it's a selective, ideology anyway. Y'all don't put in the revolutionary scholars in the, you know, and when you do, you try to, put the custom fit, Malcolm X and shit and all of that. Y'all don't put no real revolutionary thinkers and books up there. Y'all got that custom fit to America history. You know what I'm saying? Always have. It was only during the era of the Dr. Benz and Dr. Clarks and that y'all started to get some of, they would kind of put Marcus Garvey in there somewhere, but it was in the era of the 80s and shit that you started to really get, that type of history where, you would get charter schools and, teaching something about the divinity of great black civilizations and, outside of the, we shall overcome and this, that, and the third. And so, yeah, y'all ain't, so I don't give a goddamn about that. Ain't even when you understand that your history is a sacred part of your nation, then no other man can ban shit. That ain't even a possibility. Fuck another man gonna ban your history. What kind of shit is you talking about? That's supposed to be a sacred part of your being. No other man should have his hand on your history. That's sacred.
Everyone heard that?
Not just some.
No one should have a hand in your history. It's sacred.
This is our very being.
Your very being. All right, so let's talk about that. All right, let's talk about that. Let's really talk about this. Right? With the lesson, today's lesson is about the Federal Credit Recording Act, and I'm telling you that the Federal Credit Reporting Act only collects information based upon debts that were actually extended from credit extended to them, which caused the debt in the first place. Okay? And that's the problem that we need to fix, because if this is the normal way of doing business, we'll never become creditors. Okay? We'll never become creditors. And our ancestors were the original creditors, because when you go back to competition laws, antitrust law, the founders of that antitrust law, anti-monopoly law, or anti-competition law, was founded by who? The English people, the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Okay? Very important. If you don't remember that, then you will ever be lost in this race or this competition. Okay? The survival of the fittest. All right? The survival of the fittest. All right? He said that they're calling it the Doomsday Book. Okay? They are calling it the Doomsday Book. And when you're dealing with it from our understanding, the Doomsday is a recording of information that was recorded in a book. Okay? And the information that we're using to qualify what's recorded in that book stems from these kings of England, these kings of Spain, these kings of France, all right, which set the standard for what we have now known as United States antitrust law. Okay? United States antitrust law. How many of you know what antitrust law? Let's look at that real quick before I move forward. In the United States, antitrust laws is a collection of most federal laws that govern the conduct and organization of businesses in order to promote economic competition and prevent unjustified monopoly. All right? Unjustified monopoly. This is part of the privacy right that we have based upon our organization, our religious society, which under our charter, under our certificate of incorporation, we have the right to be protected under the antitrust law, anti-competition law, or what they call it, monopoly law. Because we understand that what's going on now is governed by New Jersey, United States codes that deals with trade, commerce, monopoly, what we call trust law. All that's governed under what we call the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We see it right there. You know what I'm saying? So we understand that they are never going to put us in a position as being the actual creditors because they only follow the standards that they put in place for them to be the creditors. Okay? In the United States, antitrust law is a collection of most federal laws that govern the conduct of organization business in order to promote economic competition and prevent unjustified monopolies. The three main United States antitrust statutes are the Sherman Act of 1890, the Clayton Act of 1940, and the Federal Trade Commission Act of 1914. These acts serve three major functions. First, Section 1 of the Sherman Act prohibits price fixing and the operation or cartels and prohibits other collusive practices that unreasonably restrain trade. This is all a part of civil liabilities that corporations, businesses, monopolies have to face when they violate the rights protected under the consumer privacy rights of those who are protected by the competition anti-monopoly laws. Okay, and we know the originator of those laws were the kings and queens of England. We just don't have case laws to support that, i.e. president. We have statutory law to support that. Okay, very important that we understand that. How we know? Let's see. Under New Jersey Revised Statute, Title 52, colon 4-7. Okay? All these agencies that deal with collecting information or data information, presumably to be based upon demographics, all right, is done by the big three: Experian, uh, what we call TransUnion, and Equifax. All right, as well as the numerous other ones out there. Okay, whatever state they reside in. But our particular focus on is the data collection that's collected from the bureaus that record uh, credit, and when they record credit, they record in debt that was given through the process of what they call credit. So don't let them fool you when they call it the Fair Credit Recording Act. It should be called the Fair Debit Recording Act because they're not recording anything based upon credit. Because when you get it, it normally denotes to and recourse as debt. Okay? We understand that the Fair Credit Reporting Act is based upon the collected data that's based upon the behavioral practices of those in that demographic, i.e., the society. Okay? Very important that you understand what I'm talking about because it happens in all societies, and in all societies, based upon the data collected, based upon the demographics, is not based upon the demographics of who you truly are, based upon how you're supposed to really identify yourself pursuant to the public record. Okay? Because it says here under the revised statute, Title 52, and New Jersey under Title 52 is a temporary or provisionary government. Okay? And provisionary government or temporary government usually reside in the breakdown of the original government. Okay? Once again, a temporary or provisionary government usually results in a breakdown of the original government, that being the Crown government in New Jersey back in 1776 before it was removed, dissolved, and moved to Trenton, where it now actually resides. Okay? New Jersey Revised Statute Title 52, colon 1-1, concerning New Jersey state government departments and officers. Okay? Trenton and County of Mercer shall be the seat of the government in the state. All sessions of the legislature shall be held in Trenton on a temporary basis. You hear that? Temporary basis. So every law created in the state of New Jersey under the authority of the government of the state of New Jersey, where it resides at, is temporary. Okay? It's provisionary. And provisionary government, once again, usually resides in the breakdown of the original government. And that government resides provisionary or temporary till the actual other government that was there previously is restored. Okay? Very important. But they're never going to allow it to be restored as a result of the overthrow in 1776. Okay? So it says that the Trenton seat of government, and when they're talking about the seat, they're talking about the crown. Okay? Whether it's an actual throne or a regular seat that you're sitting in behind a desk. It represents the sovereignty of the state. Okay? Very important. So that in mind, let's go back to the same statute, Title 52, under the data collected information that the government, i.e. the state, was supposed to be collecting and pursuant to the behavioral data information collected pursuant to what they call the Federal Credit Recording Act, okay? Because we're being recorded by these agencies without the proper political status and civil status of who we are based upon our demographics as defined by statutory law. Okay? All right? We should be deemed creditors based upon our ancestry, because our ancestry, based upon how we identify ourselves, we're the creditors. As we've seen, based upon antitrust law or anti-monopoly law, it goes back to not just the kings of Wessex, but also the Plantagenet kings, which set the standards for what they call the United States, do what they call the concept of antitrust law. Okay? Very important. And as you can see, we are classified in Section 3, Middle Eastern, North African descent. Okay? Very important to understand that. And based upon that, our ancestry should be the data information that's being collected pertaining to that data collection information based upon demographic should be based upon what Section F states. Ancestry means the respondent's self-identification of the respondent's origin of descent, roots, heritage, or place where the respondent or respondent's parents or ancestors were born. Why this information is not being recorded? Okay? Apparently it's not, because all the information that's being recorded based upon the data collected information that's recorded by the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which reports debt, no matter how much debt you got based upon the credit that was given, is based upon the identity of how the state identify you by the provisionary government. And it's not based upon how your ancestry, because it's based upon just soil contrast or contrast to just sanguineous, meaning by blood. Okay, so by soil meaning they don't care about your parents, okay, mother or father, because based upon the citizenship clause under the 14th Amendment, they're allowed to be a citizen, and that declared or set the standard for how they will receive you based upon the demographic data collected that determines that if you are a debtor, a sinner, or a creditor, i.e., a lender. Okay, very important. Let's see, brothers and sisters. Let's see. Aetna Casualty and Surety Company versus Bromwell. All right. This is what the Supreme Court says. Supreme Court of this state has declared that the common law obtained in the state, and that by reason of its prerogative or sovereign rights, the state is entitled to preference as it respects public funds deposited in a state bank over the claims of all general creditors. Okay? Remember, we're dealing with the Fair Credit Reporting Agencies which are governed under Title 12 and Title 15. Okay, let's look at that. Title 12 and Title 15. Okay, Title 12 and Title 15. Title 12 United States Code governs, let's see, outlines the roles of banks and banking and the United States codes. Okay, so Title 12 of the United States Code outline the roles of banks and banking. Okay, banks and banking. Whenever you go into debt, it's a result of you fail to repay back a loan. Loan is a result of a debt. Okay, a deficiency in the debt which results in default because you failed to pay back, which results in the right of what they call uh the right of reversion of those who want to revert their property back to themselves as a result of that default foreclosure. Okay, very important. All right, so Title 12 governs banking, the activity of banks. Okay, then Title 15, commerce and trade. Let's look at that. Title 15 of the United States Code outlines the role of commerce and trade. Are we in the trade war, y'all? And the trade war is based upon the monopolies or business or corporations that are exercising the authority that were authorized by the enactment of such a colorable statute, okay, which are bad policies because they violate antitrust law, okay? They violate antitrust law based upon competition law that was created by our ancestors. But as a result of us being in a position as debtors, we're in a bad position. All right. Only way to restore us so that we won't be debtors, which is dependent upon the authority of the creditor, which was our ancestors. Okay. So we no longer fall under the category of credit. Okay. We just don't want credit. We don't want a handout or a gift. All right. Because usually it comes with attachment. We want to be restored and made whole from where we originated from, and that as the original creditors. Okay. But in order for you to understand that, you must understand the origin of where the concept of consumer privacy rights stem from, as well as what we call uh, what was it? Privacy rights, where they stem from. Okay, competition law and privacy law. Very important concepts to understand based upon our rights that's protected because the public record protects your privacy right based upon the Public Record Act. Okay, and everyone who is not aware of the public record or are aware of the public record have a responsibility to protect the that privacy right to the expectancy of that citizen who rights is requested to be protected. Okay, very important. Let's see. Back to ethnic casualty. So it says Supreme Court of the state has declared that the common law obtains in the state and that by reason of its prerogative or sovereign right, the state is entitled to the preference as its respect public funds deposited in a state bank over the claims of all general creditors. Okay? Of all general creditors. It is said about Supreme Court that the question whether this priority right is a prerogative right or a rule of administrative is one of local law, and that the determination thereof by the highest court of the state concludes the federal courts. And Marshall versus New York, which we'll go to in a second, so that this court is bound by the doctrine promulgated in the Oregon case cited. The case pertains to the state prerogative preference right and have no relation to any preference right of the county of the state. The question we are now to solve presents an entirely different problem. What problem? Let's see. Counties are merely political agencies of the state, created by legislative enactments for governmental purposes. Their duties are imposed upon them by law, and in the performances thereof they act in behalf of the state. They are therefore civil or political agencies or are instrumentalities of the state. Okay? Government. So they are instrumentalities of the state government. Among other things, they are charged with the duty of levying and collecting taxes in the manner prescribed by law. Taxes are levied by the county commissioners under the authority of law, which body levies in the same authority the taxes ascertained to be necessary for state purposes and prorated to the county by the state tax commission. The expenses of collection are made by the assessor and sheriff as tax collectors. So debt is a tax. Okay? Very important. If you got credit, it's debt, and that is a tax that one and at some time or another will have to be paid back. It's just to who it should be paid back is the question. So let's see that question being answered. It is hardly essential to define prerogative with technical accuracy. Under Mr. William Blackstone definition, it can only be applied to those rights and capacities which kings enjoys alone, and contradistinction to others, and not to those which he enjoys in common with any of his subjects. Blackstone commentaries. A New Jersey chancellor has defined royal prerogatives, i.e., New Jersey chancellor has defined royal prerogatives, a royal prerogative as the special preeminence which a sovereign has over all other persons, and out of the course of the common law, by right of regal dignity, in Great Britain, which is Great England, Ireland, and Scotland, and that didn't come till the unification of 1707. Prior to that, that sovereignty and that regal power was separate. So in Great Britain, the royal prerogatives include the right of sending and receiving ambassadors and making treaties, and theoretically of making war and concluding peace, whether it's Cold War, Hot War, Trade War, etc., or of summoning Parliament and of refusing assent to a bill by way of an executive order, with many other political, judicial, as well as ecclesiastical, etc. privileges. Century Dictionary prerogative. The word simply means a power or will which is discretionary and above and uncontrolled by any other will. It is frequently used used to express the uncontrolled will of a sovereign power in the state. It is applied not only to the king, but also to the legislative and judicial branches of the government when the king ain't there. Okay? We must understand how they're using authority that they don't have because the king ain't there to strip them of that authority. Because just like they were created by statutory law, they can be severed by that statutory law. Because statute means dead statute. Okay? This kingly power or authority or privilege whatsoever, its scope or whatever it attributes there is in it of sovereignty rests with the people in this country when the king ain't there. Okay? Because when the king wasn't there, that sovereignty went to the people, but the people ain't sovereign because they debtors. That means that you are now subject to the laws of interstate, which means that everything that you did have as a creditor now became escheated to the state of New Jersey. And they don't have the authority to do so because they don't even damn exist. Let's continue. They may vitalize it into government. In doing so, they may delegate certain powers pertaining to the sovereignty and reserve others. They have as to national affairs delegated to the national government the authority for coining money, making treaties with foreign states, and the like. Other powers they have delegated to the states, and even then they possess a residuum of the sovereignty. The states are sovereign within the compass of their delegated powers and carry on through the ordinary branches of government, the executive, legislative, and judicial. The lawgiver is therefore the sovereign state, created and organized by the people, acting through its legislative branch. And as we go back to the Provincial Council of New Jersey in 1776, it was a provisionary government under the king, Parliament and its council, because it's called the King's Council. Supreme Court also has stated and declared that the right of priority of payments of debts due to the government is a prerogative of the crown. Well known to the common law, it is founded not so much upon a personal advantage to the sovereign as upon motives of public policy in order to secure the adequate revenues to sustain the public burden and discharge the public debt. Is the public debt being discharged? No. Why? Because there is no king to secure the adequate revenue, because all those revenues that were supposed to be held by the people are now in those who are claimed to be the creditor, which in fact they are not. They have exchanged places with you. The claim of the United States, however, does not stand upon any sovereign prerogative, but is exclusively founded upon the actual provisions of their own statutes. Just like it was created by statute, it can be dissolved by statute. The same policy which governed in the case of the royal prerogative may be clearly traced to these statutes. And as the policy have mainly a reference to the public good, there is no reason for giving them a strict and narrow interpretation. United States versus Bank of North Carolina, as well as they also mentioned what? What other case did they mention? There was another case they mentioned. Where was it at? Marshall versus New York. Marshall versus New York and United States versus the state of Bates, North Carolina. So let's go there since they were referenced in this case. All right. Marshall versus New York. Let's look at it. The brother said we need some public policies, right? So this is where we're looking. Public policy that were enacted and supported by the common law, i.e. presidents. All right? All right? The claim of the United States, the claim of the United States, however, does not stand upon any sovereignty prerogative, but is exclusively founded upon the actual provisions of their own statute. The same policy which governs in the case of royal prerogatives may be clearly traced to these statutes, and as the policy had mainly reference to the public good, there is no reason to give them any strict or narrow interpretation. So we're talking about policies that denote to the royal prerogative that were talked about in the United States versus the state Bank of North Carolina, as well as Marshall versus New York. All right, the same policy that he claimed we need to make. Okay, when we already have these policies already in place, brothers and sisters. Let's look at it. Marshall versus New York. (1920). Supreme Court on appeal. At the common law, the Crown of Great Britain, by virtue of prerogative right, had priority over all subjects for the payment out of debtors' property of all debts due to it, whether the property was in possession of the debtor, which is now the creditor, because the creditor is the debtor to extend debt when actually he's the debtor because he can't even prove he had the right to actually be the creditor. Okay? Because usually the creditor is a lender or a seller. Okay? Remember, we got three. You can't be a seller or a lender if you're not the goddamn owner. Okay? If you're not the owner, nine times out of 10, the seller or the lender is fraudulent. Okay? And that's violation of antitrust law. It's a violation of the Federal Credit Reporting Act, and you can be sued. Okay? You can be sued. A light priority based on sovereignty prerogatives belongs to the state of New York, as her highest court has decided to her adoption by her constitution of the common law and the taxable debts due to the state by sister state corporations as license fees or tax for privileges doing business in New York. See, this is where the problem comes in. What didn't belong to them, now they're claiming to have the right to exercise that sovereign prerogative power, which only belongs to the king. Okay, but if the king's away, the people will play. Okay, right there. Marshall, New York said said this in 1920, as well as they also said it in United States versus Bank of North Carolina. This is back in 1832. Let's look at it. The right of priority of payment of debts due to the government is a prerogative of the Crown of England. It didn't say Great Britain. It didn't say Great Britain until 1902. Okay, in Marshall versus New York. 1920. That's when it said Great Britain in 1920. All right? And we know that 1920, this is when Great Britain, which came to be unified in 1707. Prior to that, there was no Great Britain because they were now unified. And we see back in 1702 to 1776, the Crown of England was indefinite. Okay? The Crown of England was indefinite. United States versus State of Bank of North Carolina. And we know the Bank of North Carolina is governed under what? Title 12 and Title 15 of the United States Code. Okay? And it says here, the right of priority of payment of debts due to the government is a prerogative of the Crown of England. It did not say Great Britain. Great Britain just took on what was supposed to be going to England. Okay? And it says it's well known to the common law and is founded not so much upon the personal advantages to the sovereign as upon the motives of public policy to secure an adequate revenue to sustain the public burden and discharge the public debt. What debt? The debt of the public. Lord, forgive us of our sins. Okay? Has the Lord forgive you of your sins? If he did, you will be a creditor. You should have credit. Okay? But they don't have the proper demographics collected in their data banks to give you credit. It was never designed for you to have credited because why would they allow you to be the creditor when they themselves are not the creditors? All right? Because they're just lending and selling based on what they call easement, a right to use something that does not belong to them. Okay? Once again, just like they said in what was it? Aetna Casualty Insurance Company, and majority of us have Aetna, all right, insurance company, right? Just as they said in that case, they're saying right here that the claim of the United States to priority does not stand upon any sovereign prerogative, but it's exclusively founded on the actual provisions of its own statutes. So they created a statute to denote to the sovereign problem that the statute created. If there was no statute created that denotes that sovereign that was created by the statute, the only sovereign that would be there was that was already in statute as declared by the law. Okay? The same policy which governs in the case of the royal prerogative may clearly be traced in their statute, and as that policy has mainly a reference to the public good, there is no reason to give them a straight, narrow interpretation. And we go right to New Jersey Revised Statute, Title 46, going to do that too. We talked about all inheritance, landers, mans, etc. Belongs to the King of England, body policies, or person. Okay? They didn't say Great Britain, Scotland, Ireland, or any other nation for that matter. It said England specifically. Okay? We see this also qualified in Marshall versus New York. So Marshall versus York, we just read. And we just read United States versus State of Bank of North America. We read Marshall versus New York, 1920, and we went to Marshall, United States versus Bank of North America, 1832. And both of these cases specifically speak about the prerogative, royal regalia, and the what we call radical title that the king has, whether it was the king sitting on the king of as great the king of Great Britain, or was it just the king sitting on the king of England? Okay, very important for you to understand that, especially in reference to what we call good public policies, because the policies that they're made under the government was good. Okay, how do we know that? All right, let's see. Let's go back to those. Where are we at? Let's go back here to Fair Credit Reporting Act, real quick. If everyone keeping up with me, give me a thumbs up in the chat. Consumer reporting agencies. So these are the people who collect the data based upon your assumed demographics. All right. And the demographics that assume based upon the data they collected is the data that denotes to a sinner, a debtor, because the credit that you get comes from them. And that credit that comes from them is actually debt that they owe to somebody else. Okay. That you don't know about. Okay. Until now. Okay. Until now. Okay. It says the three big credit reporting agencies: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Do not interact with information furnished directly as a result of consumer disputes. They use systems called EOSCAR in some areas of the country. However, there are other credit reviewers aware as well. All right. Now, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, which I mentioned, as well as uh, um, Credit Karma. Okay, all, all these particular agencies, whether it's a limited liability company, uh, public liability company, as well as a what was it called? Just an incorporation. Okay, because all of these are still subject to corporations that existed before them. All right, which they are descendants of. Okay, very important. One company that I'm speaking about in general is the Standard Oil Company. Okay? The Standard Oil Company. Very important. All right? I want to take a special look at one of these in particular. So we know out of all these, Telecheck, Choice Point, Axiom, Integrated Screening Partners, Innovis, Insurance Services Offices, Tenant Data Services, LexisNexis, Retail Equations, Central Credit, Teletrack, MIB Group, Unit Health Group, in the next division, as well as Millimon. There were other major credit reporting agencies such as Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. One and specifically is Equifax. Equifax. Actually, it's not Equifax, but nonetheless, they were still they're descended from uh, the company Standard Oil Company. I think it is TransUnion. Yeah, TransUnion. TransUnion. When we think of TransUnion, have all the other unions or companies look at them in that same darkness. Okay? Look at them in that same darkness. Okay? Very important. TransUnion Limited Liability Corporation is the American Consumer Credit Reporting Agency. TransUnion collects aggregates information on over 1 billion individual consumers in over 30 countries, including 200 million files profiling nearly every credit active consumer in the United States. Its customers including over 65,000 businesses. Based upon Chicago, Illinois, TransUnion 214 revenue was 1.3 billion. It is the smallest of the three largest credit agencies, along with Experian and Equifax, known as the big three. So whatever they're doing, you can best believe Experian and Equifax is doing as well. Okay, so if TransUnion activities previous to their affiliation with the other big two, Experian and Equifax, then we can clearly see that as a result of their unification and as a result of their business practices, they're stemmed from the same source, which is told through the history of TransUnion. Let's see. TransUnion was originally formed in 1968 as a holding company for the Union Tank Car Company, making TransUnion a descendant of the Standard Oil, the United Tank Car Company. Once again, when you hear Standard Oil, let's look at it real quick. Because it's governed under Title 15, monopolies. Okay? Monopolies. All right? Title 12 deals with banks and banking. Title 15 deals with monopolies, corporations, businesses, etc. So it says that following the 1911 Supreme Court ruling that found that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. This goes back to the Rockefellers, okay? This goes back to New Jersey Standard Oil Company, which we'll visit in a second. Right there. Everyone see that? Standard Oil Company of New Jersey, United States. All right, 1911 case. Many of these companies later became part of the Seven Sisters, which dominated global petroleum production in the 20th century and became a majority of today's largest investors-owned oil company, with most tracing their roots back to the Standard Oil Company. Hear that? So all of these, whether you want to call them the big three or the Seven Sisters, all go back to the Standard Oil Company, going back to a 1911 Supreme Court case, which ended the fate for this company, which was started by who? The Rockefellers. Okay? The Rockefellers. Let's go to it. State versus Parson, Standard Oil Company. This case was in 1911, but it was appealed to the Supreme Court, and the ultimate decision was made by the Supreme Court in 1950. State of New Jersey by Theodore D. Parson, the Attorney General, plaintiff responded as versus Standard Oil Company defendant and appellate. Okay? Very important. 1950. There is no substance to the contention under the Constitution of 1947. The Escheat Act limits the operation of the statutes of limitations, even to the point of divesting an accrual right of defense under its provision. The argument is that these statutes have lost all force and vitality upon the abrogation of the Constitution of 1844 by the adoption of the Constitution of 1947. again came into full force and effect simultaneously by virtue of their wholesale reenactment under paragraph 3 of that new Constitution, and so they must be read together and reconciled. And therefore, the She Act is not subject in any manner to the statutes of limitations, meaning that you can't say that you can't bring a claim under the statute of limitations, meaning that you didn't fall in the right time, because this involves what they call a curate reggae, what's called a curate reggae. The statute of limitation does that run against the king or against the king. All right. It says here, uh, but the mere continuance of these statutes by constitutional fiat is not indicative of the purpose of abrogate vested right to defense permissible under the statutes of limitation. There is no suggestion of the legislative design by the original enactment to annul the bar of the statute of limitation and revive it in favor of the state a debt or demand that inter parties had lost its vitality by the operation of that statute. The Constitution of 1947 does not give the statute a radically different quality of meaning. Why is this so? In modern usage of the word or the term escheat, signifies the falling of property to the sovereign for want of an owner. And this category embraces not only property which has no other owner, but also property owners who owners or whereabout is unknown. Under the common law of England, escheat came to be classified as another branch of the king's what? Ordinary revenue. Blackstone Commodore, once again, was originally an incident of tenure and now become an incident of sovereignty. The doctrine received at the early common law operative only upon that which was the subject of the tenure, since it related to the reversionary right of the lord to take for what? One of a tenant, which was eventually extended to include personal property, tangible or intangible. The principle was that the right to take which that belongs to no one appertained not to the state, but to the crown as the jure regalia, the radical title of the king. When the crown steps to take property because it is vacant, it is taken by the state as bona vacantia because the crown ain't there. When the crown come back, it's taken as a matter of right, as the exercise of the sovereign power of the crown. Why? Because in personal estates, which are allodial by law, the king is last heir when there is no king. Okay? The king is last heir when there is no kindred. When there is no kindred, it results in interstate, and interstate means that all of y'all are dead. Okay? So this will mean that this is in fact the resurrection of the dead. Okay? When the king comes back to resurrect you and restores your estate that was taken to you, which is the result of it being in fact allodial. I'm not saying that. The statute says that. Let's look at it in its entirety. Yeah. New Jersey Revised Statute, Title 46:3-6. This is public policy. Public policies, my brothers and sisters. A policy that protect you in the public. Okay? Right here. If the king is next, next of kin when there's no heirs because it's a lodio, then hey, here's the proof here. All gifts, grants, or conveyances made prior to July 4th, 1776 of an estate of inheritance by letter patent under the great seal of the state or any other manner by the state or by the legislature thereof or by the commissioner or agents of the forfeited estate or by any other lawful competent authority of the state shall and be remain a lodio. All right? Not under the state, but under the king. Okay? Not under the state, but under the king. This is public policy that we all lack the understanding. Let's go back to the video.
legacy of our ancestors, and without it, we are nothing.
Nothing.
You see, without it, we are nothing. So we have to, our history must be sacred. So I don't worry about them saying they ain't banning nothing. My Dr. Benz and all my Dr. They right where they said, how do you gonna ban that? It's right here. See, they banning that bullshit you niggas got out there, and they putting that shit out to museums and things of that nature. That's all about, what's going on. They cannot succeed in that. Yeah? They cannot succeed. They don't have the strength. See, the thing is, they think, and I'm going to just say what it is. The reality is they built this nation on our backs. And they must realize that there's no other way that it could have helped. You couldn't have had the ingenuity to do this. If you did, you wouldn't have enslaved our people. You would have did it of your own, your own ingenuity. You didn't have the ingenuity to do it, And so don't think so you running around the planet like a mad race, trying to, figure out how you can, and you can't do it because you didn't do it in the first place. You didn't do it in the first place. And so the dynamics is you didn't win mad. And so what you're gonna do, you're gonna put tariffs on everybody. And I understand that people think, well, it's gonna bring businesses back.
You see that building the size of several football fields just behind me? What's happening inside those walls is so incredible that Elon's competitors have been flying drones over this building.
To the United States. And it very well, it may bring businesses and jobs back. We'll see. We'll see. But in the meantime, I wouldn't wait on that. That ain't what we're about. We're not waiting on nobody. We can do things for ourselves right now. You want some jobs? Get them. Put it. Start deporting all of these. They putting out people. They putting out people right now. You see, put some motherfuckers out. Yeah, put them Arabs out your damn community that own every liquor store. They ain't gonna let you go out there and own that shit.
Listen, y'all.
They ain't gonna let you go out there and own nothing in their community in entirety. They ain't gonna let black people own 90% of the businesses and the stores and the supermarkets in their community. Why do you let them come down here and do that in your community? And get mad at another motherfucker. See, you creating boogeyman. Who letting you, who allowing them to do that? You see? We keep talking about all this shit about, I see motherfucker talking about, in the last video, a motherfucker say Africa left, you left yourself for dead, nigga. You ain't did shit about these Arabs until okay, then we understand, things happen. Okay, but what's happening right now on the ground right now? You looking, okay, that happened. Okay, we talking about elevating up out of all this shit. So which means we understand that shit has happened. We understand that, and it's gonna, and the correction is gonna be when we succeed after all that's been done. We still gonna be successful, and we still gonna be the pinnacle of civilization when we get our shit together. That's how you eradicate and you bring, find retribution. And we're not even talking about retribution. And maybe some motherfuckers, it might be retribution. You know what I'm saying? Because some people still against us, and we understand that, but that's not everybody. You see, but what's happening right now, that where we ain't dealing with what's happening in our community, that's on us. You see? You keep talking about, oh, well, they did. Okay, then we know that, but what's happening with this? Who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for, they ain't responsible for why these Arabs is, and you going in and niggas take every dollar and go into the Arab store every fucking day? Who responsible for that? Nigga, you decide to get your bitch ass up off the couch and go into that goddamn.
Think about that. Who is responsible for that? All right. Who is responsible for that when every day you wake up, all in the argument of Fair Credit Reporting Act, because apparently you the debtor because they're the one that's sending you credit for a loan that you got, but you ain't even paying for nothing. They got that ability to be able to want to make you a consumer. All right. And yet they're acting as if they're the creditor when they're actually the consumer as a result of the debt that they've been put based upon a false promise. Okay? All in resolving under the guise that you're making money. Okay? That you are in fact making money. You are not making money, brothers and sisters. You are not making money. You're making debt. Okay? Wildcat banking. Wildcat banking was the issue of paper currency in the United States by poorly capitalized state chartered banks, all governed under Title 12, okay, which is the monopoly governed under Title 15, okay, which is all deals with loans that make you a debtor as a result of the default that made you a debtor based upon the false promise that they actually gave you something, okay? And as a result of that, now we got the Fair Credit Reporting Act that based upon the data they collected, which is improper data because it doesn't have nothing to do with your proper demographics. The only demographic they are concerned about is what they classify you when they made you an employee or a worker. Okay? So Wildcat banking was the issue of paper currency in the United States by poorly capitalized state chartered banks. These Wildcat banks existed alongside more stable state banks during the free banking era from 1836 to 1865, during the time of slavery. When the country had no national banking system, states granted bank charters readily and applied to regulatory effectively, if at all. So even the banks that existed were ineffective and they were poorly regulated. Bank closures and outright scams regularly occur, leaving people with worthless money. Isn't that happening right now, brothers and sisters? Isn't that happening right now as a result of the fraudulent contracts and heatable contracts? Well, operations in remote locations limited or absent of financial infrastructure, Wildcat banks supplied a medium of exchange in the form of a bearer's note that they issue on their own credit, which means false credit. This note was formerly redeemable in species, i.e., gold and silver coins, based upon the laws governing redemption, but typically collateralized by other assets such as government bonds or real estate notes. Okay, this is called mortgages. We know the word mortgage means debt pledge. You actually accepted a false promise and agreed to the false promise by way of a so-called credit that they said they so-called extended you by way of a so-called loan from a loan agency, which is a lender. Okay, and the lender actually 9 times out of 10 is associated with the seller because in order for you to buy a house, you need to be able to get the loan for it. All these services are provided by the state or the federal government based upon their public privacy. Okay? These notes were formerly redeemable in gold and silver, but now they typically collateralized by other assets, such as government bonds or real estate notes, or occasionally by nothing at all. Hence, they carry a risk that the bank cannot redeem them on demand. Okay? Very important for you to understand that because it's coming down the pipe. Okay? It's coming down the pipe. Let's look at it. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act is an act passed by legislation to report the debt that will be accumulated based upon the credit that's given to somebody who doesn't have the right to give anything because he was not the original creditor. Okay? So if you're so-called saying that you're in good standing with the government based upon your credit, they have lied to you, brothers and sisters. They have lied to you. Whether your credit score is 800 or it's a 450, you are still indebted to the system. all right? Because they will never allow you to be a creditor. This we must understand, okay? And this is because of their public policies, all right? Their public policies. In closing, okay, consumer privacy. In closing, consumer privacy is information privacy as it relates to the consumers of products and services. A variety of social, legal, political issues arises from the interaction of the public potential expectation of privacy. So, what is your expectation of privacy that you expect the government, the businesses that are operating in society, and the right that you have and expectancy of your privacy as a consumer? Okay, very important that that is put on the record, okay? Because what was put on the record based upon your expectancy of privacy is that their expectation that is now public is that you are in fact a debtor based upon the information provided, based upon the information collected, based upon how they classify you pursuant to demographics, okay? Very important. Consumer private concerns date back to the first commercial carrier and bankers who enforced strong measures to protect consumer privacy, which is known the origin where it comes from, wildcat banking. Okay, all right. So there is no ethnical code based upon wildcat banking because it was all fraudulently, and it was based upon client confidentiality. Okay, client confidentiality. Okay, this is a violation of your rights based upon how you're supposed to be identified based upon what New Jersey revised statute says by the state government pertaining to the classification of the demographics based upon MENA, which is Middle Eastern and North African people, and based upon their behavioral practices, which is not based upon the practices that were carried out through what we call wildcat banking. Okay? So therefore, we have to put them on notice that you have violated the consumer privacy rights based upon competition or anti monopoly or antitrust laws that protect the right of the creditor, okay? And those who have the right to receive the creditor from the original creditor. And as I provided for you today, that is the King of England, okay? That is the King of England. Let's see where we at. Right here. Legislative findings. Before I go there, I'm closing out on this. Right here. Title 52, colon 6, 4-6 of New Jersey's public policy from the government of New Jersey in regards to demographics that's recorded on behalf of the agencies called the credit bureaus, okay? And it clearly says here, right? Says here in closing, Middle East North African communities in the state and on the federal level are categorized as white. However, this racial identity has not matched the discrimination in housing, workplace, and through daily life that many in the MENA community say they have faced. Many younger people in the MENA community often compare their experience to those in the communities of color. However, with the lack of clear category and the paradox has been difficult to show the correct data. Okay. Okay, so we are continuing to be discriminated in the housing as well as in the workplace, as well as in the ability to be able to get loans, etc. Because the data collection that is being collected is based upon the demographics. I have now identify you as the colored people on the state level, and the white people on the national level, which according to that you were not deemed to be even a citizen. Okay, so as a result of that, and based upon this new enactment, it clearly says here that right here. It says here the data collected pursuant to the provisions of the subsection A and B of this section should be included in every demographic report on ancestry of residents of the state of New Jersey by the state agencies published or released on after the first day of the 6th month following the effective date of this act, published 2003, Title 52:4-6. So that means that the demographics that the Federal Credit Reporting Act requires should be the information based upon the demographics denoted to you as a Middle Eastern North African ancestry, based upon your paternal and maternal ancestry, and not based upon you just being born here. Okay? And it says that according to that ancestry, the data collected pursuant to the provisions of the subsection A and B of the section should be included in every demographic report of ancestry of the residents of the state of New Jersey and published and released at that particular date. And it also says that, where is it at? I just read it. That data should be made available. Okay? That data should be available to the public in accordance with the state and federal law, except for personal identification information, which should be deemed confidential by posting the data in the internet website of the state agency. This goes to public. This takes you to Title 47:1A-1 of the revised statute dealing with the public record and with the legislative fine and its intent. Okay? In closing, the legislature finds and declares it to be public policy. Once again, we're talking about public policy of the state or any state that the government records should be readily accessible for inspection, copying, or examination by the citizens of the state, with certain exceptions for the protection of the public interest and any limitation on their right of access according to the Public Record Act as amended and supplemented should be construed in favor of the public right to that access. Okay? All governments, once again, records should be subject to the public access unless exempt from such access. As amended and supplemented in any other statute resolution, either by houses of the legislature, regulated, promulgated under the authority of any statute or an executive order, which is in question now, or of the governor, executive order of the governor, rules of the court, or any federal law for that matter, federal regulation or federal order, a public agency, whether it's TransUnion, um, uh, uh, Credit Karma, Equifax, Experian, a public agency has a responsibility and an obligation, listen, y'all, to safeguard from public access a citizen personal information, which it has been entrusted, which when disclosed thereof will violate the citizen reasonable expectation of privacy. So, what is your expectation of privacy pertaining to your rights as a consumer? Okay? What is your expectation of your rights as a consumer based upon the data information that's collected by these agencies of the state? Because it does not reflect your true identity as a Anglo-Saxon Berber. Okay? An Anglo-Saxon Berber, which is based upon the demographic location where they come from, is Libya, Morocco, Algeria, all these were listed right here. All of them are listed right here. In closing. Right here. In closing. Section 3. Each major Middle East North African group, including but not limited to Algerian, Bahraini, Egyptian, Jordanian, Kuwait, Lebanese, Libyan, Morocco, Omani, and Tunisian. Okay? We know based upon Emre Hamasan, based upon United States versus 1 K Mark, based upon United States versus Oswa, based upon United States versus Bagat Singh Thing, which is the case I spoke about in my prior lessons. All these reflect not just the characteristics, but the ethnicity, genealogy, bloodline, based upon your right as heirs to be able to restore yourself as the original creditors, okay, to the land. And that the reports made by these bureaus should reflect that you are in fact the original creditors and that they are the ones indebted to you as established by the public policies, i.e. those statutes. And we go back to the video to close out on. Because what he's showing you we should be doing, we here at the Third Dominion Church of England are actually doing.
Store and take whatever little dollars you got and put it in that Arab hand, and he takes it way back out there where he stay at. Put his babies in Mercedes Benz and Corvettes and all of that. They come drive down into your city and roll around the blocks in your city in front of your damn children. And you didn't put all your motherfucking dollars in their pocket for them to be able to do that. Who doing that, nigga? That's your bitch ass. You see?
Once again, excuse the language.
Okay. Nobody doing that. So you see, a lot of times you want to find a boogeyman in each one of these niggas. If you put a motherfucking camera on their bitch ass, they'll be up here talking all this shit. The FBA, they'll be talking Pan-African, Comedicism. And like I used to say, I'll be having lectures. They'll be in there talking about black power, black power. Soon as that bitch nigga hit the door, he do white power. He gone. He going run right down there to the goddamn Arab store. He go right down there to the white man's store and he spend every fucking dollar he got. Go get him a pack of blunts, 40s, all the, get him some of that greasy ass or chicken and shit and pizza right out the Arab store. Won't spend $1 with black people and then get right up on the internet and be talking FBA, Pan-African, Comedic, this, that, and the third. Fuck y'all niggas. Y'all responsible for your own motherfucking demise.
Listen to what he just said outside of the profanity. Hold that thought. Hold on. We cause this problem, brothers and sisters. The lack of patronage, the lack of support, the lack of courage. We have done this, okay? All right. Where is the application of what it is that you're saying that's going to bring forth the ability to restore our ability to be the creditors, okay? To be able to have um uh uh to proper economic package as he spoke about in this video to be able to sustain ourselves even in the conditions of what's about to take place globally, okay? Because someone needs to initiate or implement this type of plan, okay? All right? And no one has done that, okay? Far as I know, except me, okay? We have an actual DACA number, okay? an actual docket number to quiet the title on Crown land. Okay, so this is the proof that I'm showing the people versus telling the people that it's needed, and that is not just the public policies, but the application of the public policies and the steadfastness of making sure that they're being upheld. All right, let's continue.
Quit making boogeymans up and deal with the fact.
Quit making excuses.
In your community right now, your bitch ass is responsible for. Quit making boogeymans, nigga. Oh, you get to look, oh, look, what they, bitch, nigga, you did this. I'm worried about who doing this right here.
They already know the position they play. They are the creditors. Okay? They were put in a position to extend credit to you as a debtor. Like you said, every time you go in these stores, they're providing a service. All right? You are receiving the service that they provide for you, and as a result of that, you pay for it. Okay? You pay for it. Okay? So once again, we really need to consider what it is that we claim to be doing in regards to the restoration of our liberation as a people. Okay? And that's first understanding that we must first become the creditors. Okay? We must first become the creditors because apparently we can't get nothing for ourselves. Everything that he said belongs to us has been given to those who are now occupying what it is that belongs to us, and we ain't doing nothing about it, how to reclaim it, okay? Because everything is abstract talk, okay? That hopefully is just going to, one day they're going to give it back, or it's going to fall in our lap. It ain't going to happen that way unless you get boots on the ground. I ain't talking about 300, 400 people walking down the street and purple uniform with ridges on it, white ridges or blue, whatever association with. I'm talking about those booths need to be in the courtroom. Okay, you need to be in courtroom with me on the 24th of this month. All right, because I'm fighting for the restoration and liberation of your estate. That's where you should be in right now. On April 25th, 2025, you should be in the courtroom. Okay? You should be in the courtroom. April, on May 2nd, you should be in the criminal court to support your king. Because I'm trying to do, whether it's in the criminal court or chancery court, it's going to get done. All right? It's going to get done. Let's continue.
This is us. We the majority here right now. What's happening here? What's happening here? Why they own all every gas station, every liquor store, every supermarket? You see goddamn Indians, Hindu Indians that took over churches chicken. I say, God damn, the world is coming to an end the day that a vegetarian gonna feed a nigga chicken. To be vegetarian, they ain't no goddamn vegetarian. They over there eating them cows and shit, lying like a motherfucker. They over there eating all them cows. Talking about the cow holy.
It's funny. I'll give him that.
Ribs right, goddamn nah. Curry seasoning on that shit and everything else.
Outside of the jokes, really consider what he's saying.
And no, you ain't fooling me. And so that's the reality. Niggas is making all these boogeymans because they don't want to deal with the reality. They responsible. And even if motherfuckers did do it, we gonna get them. You see what I'm saying? We gonna get them. We gonna rise up. That's gonna be the first way, is empowering our people. So when we do step to a motherfucker, we empower. We can't step and make no correction, even if some people did, and they did, they put our ancestors in a hell of a predicament. You see what I'm saying? That many of them couldn't come back. It should be some retribution for that.
Okay. Retribution, reclamation, How do we do that? Okay. All right. You can't do that on no platform. Okay. You got to do that by having boots in that courtroom bringing a claim. Okay. What person has done that to protect the consumer rights, the privacy rights, the trust rights that we have that has been trusted in us by our ancestors? Okay. Very important because the Fair Credit Reporting Act, according to what they're reporting, has not done the job. Okay? Has not done the job. Okay? And as a result of that, we have become a bigger people. Okay? So understand, brothers and sisters, this is in fact a competition. This is a race. Okay? This is a race. Okay? And you need to find out what line you're in this race. Okay? All right? And the race is protected based upon those who are entrusted to run that race and to abide by the laws of that race. Okay? How many of them have lived up to that requirement? Okay? And if you are members of the Third Temple English Church of England, then you have lived up to that requirement because based upon the competition laws, i.e., antitrust law, i.e., anti-monopoly laws that we created, they go back to what? Queen of Petors. Right here. Fine. Before I close out, where did I see it? I know I seen it. Where was that at? Let me find it, brothers and sisters. Where is it at? Antitrust law. I'm gonna just pull it out. Antitrust law. Let me see if it pops up here. Where is it at? So again, Fair Credit Reporting Act. If you ain't no creditor, no matter if you receive credit, you're still a debtor. You're still a debtor, brothers and sisters. Just a debtor with a lot of credit. Come on. If it shows up. Sherman's Act. Is that it? No, that's not it. Hold on. I know it's up here. Let me just find it before I close out. Competition laws. Is it competition laws? Let's see. This might be it. No, that's not it. Okay, I'm not gonna find it. All right. So with that, I just want you all to understand how important it is. I just understand how important it is that the Fair Credit reporting agencies and the data information that they collect based upon the demographics is based upon how they define demographics. And we know demographic means writing graph or picture, all right? And we know that demos means people in society. And we understand that based upon what Title 52 of the revised statute classifies demographics in the collection of information, how to deal with the classifications as designed in the statute, which based upon it deals with Middle Eastern, Northern African ancestry, okay, which it says on the federal level will be white person, in lieu of a better term, or color on the state level. So uh, we meet the description of both, being that those are of the characteristics that the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica says that were Anglo-Saxon heritage, dark-skinned Anglo-Saxons. Okay, so with that in mind, understand that you'll forever be subject to the deficiencies of whatever they want you to be deficient in, especially when it comes to not being deficient. All right. He who writes your book, set your timeline. To understand how important it is to understand the Fair Credit uh, Recording Act and what it is that they record based on demographics and the behavior of those on the demographics, uh, in the demographics. And we know that based upon that language, they have been deemed or denoted to as consumers. Okay. All right. And we don't want to be consumers. All right. We don't want to take advantage of what our ancestors, but we want to preserve it. And with that, that would be the creditors, and with creditors, that becomes discretionary of what it is that we give credit on. All right. So if you like this lesson, please leave a thumbs up in the chat line as well as on the comment box, as well as like, share, subscribe, donate if you can, as well as continue to stay on that straight and narrow path, because the fork in the road is definitely apparent today. And without those proper instructions, you'll forever be led astray. And with that, I'm going to greet you as I always is going to meet you in, as in the ways of my ancestors. Peace and love.